I found out the truth that evening when I came home earlier than usual. I remember that strange sound, a thin, barely audible vibration that didn't fit in with the usual noise of the apartment. It was coming from somewhere in the bedroom, even though my phone was in my pocket and my wife's phone was on the kitchen table, plugged into the charger. At the time, I didn't realize that this trembling buzz would change my whole life. I stopped in the hallway and listened. The house was empty. Lena, my wife, had said she would be late because they were having some kind of meeting. I was about to go into the kitchen when the vibration repeated itself a little more insistently. At that moment, something strange twitched inside me. Not alarm, but rather curiosity, fueled by the strange intonation of the sound. It was as if the phone didn't want to be found. I went into the bedroom. At first glance, everything looked normal. The bed was neatly made, the room was dimly lit, and dust particles danced on the curtains. And then, another quiet vibration, this time definitely coming from the bedside table. I approached and froze. Inside, under a stack of my old documents, lay a small dark blue phone. Push button. Cheap. The kind that either pensioners or people who need a hide buy. I just stared at it for a while, as if it should explain what it was doing in our bedroom, hidden in my nightstand. It was at that moment that I had a feeling that I couldn't shake for another month. As if you were standing on one reality, and then suddenly your foot fell somewhere deep down into a foreign layer of life. I took out my phone. The vibration stopped, and the screen went blank. But the one button still glowed with a small, warm, almost intimate reflection of an unanswered call. I pressed it. Only one word appeared on the screen. Mommy. It hit me like a blow. My mother died 5 years ago. Lena's died 8 years ago. So it's not about us. It's about someone else. I pressed the button to view the contacts. The list was short, only 4 numbers. Mommy, Klava, Pavel Stepanovich, Danila. As far as I knew, none of these people had any connection to Lena. And at that moment, I clearly felt for the first time that my wife was living a life in which I did not exist. But that was only the beginning. Lena came home an hour later. I pretended that nothing had happened, put my phone away in the closet, at the very bottom under the blankets, as if I were afraid of getting burned by it if I left it in plain sight. She entered quietly, tired, as always after late nights at work. She put down her bag, took off her coat, came up to me, and kissed me on the cheek. I didn't respond. She didn't notice. Have you had dinner? She asked, walking into the kitchen. I watched her, trying to catch any unnaturalness in her gait. But she was the same as always, neat, focused, slightly melancholic. Lena knew how to be transparent and delicate. Maybe that's why I fell in love with her back then. After a stormy romance with Marina, who was explosive and unpredictable, Lena was the opposite, a quiet haven. But now her calmness seemed suspicious. Did the meeting go well? I asked. Lena flinched slightly. It was subtle, but I noticed. Yes, exhausting. She opened the refrigerator, took out a container of salad, and put on the table. Everything was as usual, but I could already see that she was nervous. Maybe she thought it was just fatigue. Maybe it was because I was looking too closely. I wanted to take the phone out of her bag right then and there. I wanted to ask, whose is it? Why is it hidden? But a strange, almost animalistic feeling grew inside me. Don't touch it. Wait. Find out everything first. And so I sat there, watching her cut tomatoes and thinking, how long has she been cheating on me? Or maybe the phone isn't hers at all? But in the morning, I saw her open the nightstand, where the phone was no longer there, and freeze for a second, as if she felt the absence of something important. Then she closed it too sharply. Then I realized the phone was definitely hers. For the next 2 days, I walked around in a daze. I worked mechanically. Lena also became somewhat distant. She put hot dishes on the table at the wrong time and answered questions at the wrong time. Sometimes it seemed like she was going to say something, but couldn't bring herself to do it. The phone was in my backpack. I could feel its weight all the time. On the 3rd day, I couldn't take it anymore. When Lena went to the bathroom, I took out my phone and turned it on. It had an old memory card in it, just a couple of photos and a few messages. But it was the messages that changed everything. The first ones were banal, short, dry, almost businesslike. I'll be there tomorrow. Yes, I took the money. I'm here. But then, Danya, please. I can't take it anymore. He doesn't understand anything. I'm just tired, and I don't want him to suffer. You promised it wouldn't be for long. Lena, if you start getting nervous, everything will fall apart. Be patient. And the last entry was from 2 days ago. He's starting to suspect something? You were right. I reread it 5 times. He was there. I was that he. So she had been discussing me with this Danny, or Danila, and with some other people too. Pavel Stepanovich, Klava, and suddenly a thought struck me. What if it wasn't a lover? What if it's much worse? For the first time in my life, I decided to follow my own wife. I felt like a traitor, but I saw no other way out. On Thursday evening, she said she was going to the store for groceries. It was a strange time, 9 p.m. We had already bought everything we needed for the week. She left. A minute later, I left too, quietly closing the door with my hand so it wouldn't slam. It was cool outside. I walked along a parallel street, staying in the shade of the trees. At the traffic lights, I saw Lena. She was walking quickly, nervously, and then she turned, not toward the store, but toward an old 5-story building near the bus stop. The building was nothing special, dilapidated, with peeling paint. She entered the entrance confidently, as if she had been there before. I waited a minute and went in too. Inside, it smelled of dampness, cats, and something metallic. Lena went up to the 3rd floor. I could hear her footsteps, light but hurried. Then silence. I followed her. The hallway was dark. The light bulb had burned out. A faint strip of light shone from one of the doors, as if it were not completely closed. I moved closer. I heard voices. I can't take it anymore, Danya. He knows something. I can tell. He looks different. He's silent, but I know him. Calm down. You understand. We're almost there. You did everything right. There's not much left. I am scared. It's too late to be afraid. You chose this yourself. My hands trembled slightly. It was a man's voice, calm, confident, almost gentle. The door jerked, opening even wider. I saw Lena through the crack. She was sitting on the sofa, her hands clasped like a schoolgirl. Next to her was a tall young man, maybe 30 years old. He was holding her by the shoulders. We're doing this for him, the man said softly. For Andre. I froze. For me? My thoughts became confused. The world seemed to tilt. What were they doing for me? Lena suddenly pressed her palms to her face. He'll kill me when he finds out. Andre isn't like that. You don't understand? He used to be different, but now I can see how he's changing. I couldn't listen anymore. Everything was boiling inside me. Fear, jealousy, anger, confusion. I threw open the door. Lena screamed. The man jumped up abruptly. I looked at her, then at him, trying to understand something. Andre. Lena said barely audibly. I didn't recognize her voice. Who is he? What are you doing here? What for me? The words came out in bursts. The man raised his hands. Quiet. Let's talk calmly. No. I took a step forward. Explain. Right now. Or I'll. Or you'll do what? The man said it not provocatively, but as if he wanted to stop me. I was breathing heavily, as if before a fight. Lena covered her face with her hands. Andre, we'll explain everything. I didn't want to be like this. Didn't want what? What? The man looked at her. Okay, he needs to know. It won't be possible to hide it anyway. I felt everything inside me grow cold. It was the moment after which there would be no turning back. Andre, said the man, my name is Danila Sergeyevich. I'm a psychiatrist. And Lena, your wife, has been trying to help you for several months. I blinked. Help me? Yes, because you have developed a memory disorder. And you don't always remember the things you do. My head spun. I took a step back. That's nonsense. But Lena looked up, and her eyes were filled with terror. Real terror. Andre, you've been coming home covered in scratches for 2 months. You lose your keys, your documents. And you forget conversations. Whole days. We thought it was because of stress. But then it got worse. You became suspicious. Aggressive. That's not true, I whispered. I remember everything. But I suddenly realized that I couldn't remember exactly what I was doing 3 weeks ago on Friday. Or on the day I broke the mirror in the hallway. I really didn't understand then how it fell. And also, that evening when I supposedly had an argument with a colleague. But the next day, my colleague said we hadn't even seen each other. Memories began to fall on me like stones. I felt nauseous. But at that moment, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Lena flinched, and then someone knocked on the door, loudly, insistently. Danila Sergeyevich turned pale. "Who is it?" I asked. He whispered, "If it's who I think it is, things are much worse than we thought." They knocked as if they wanted not to enter, but to knock the door down along with its hinges. The dull blows echoed through the concrete corridor, each one slightly stronger than the last. Lena turned pale, stood up, and took half a step back, as if the blow could hit her right in the chest. "Who is it?" I repeated, but for some reason my voice cracked and became hoarse. Danila looked at me so intently, as if he could read my thoughts from the movement of my eyelids. "Andre, you have to stay calm. Whatever happens, don't make any sudden movements. Understand?" Is that what you would say to a patient who is about to start throwing himself against the walls? I tried to smile, but it came out crooked. The knocking repeated, now not with a fist, but with something metal. Maybe a key. Maybe a tire iron? Lena covered her mouth with her hand. It's Pavel Stepanovich," she whispered. I had seen that name in the phone, and it sounded as if this Pavel Stepanovich was the last person you would want to see in a place like this. "Who is he?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. "He's the curator." "Of what?" Lena lowered her eyes. Danila intervened. "Andre, understand. Lena and I have been monitoring your condition for several months." She thought everything was under control. But then the outbursts of aggression began, along with sleep disturbances and memory lapses. She turned to a psychologist, then to me. I diagnosed a condition similar to dissociative episodes. But later it became clear that this might not be just a psychological issue. He hesitated. "What?" I took a step forward. "Speak." "We suspect secondary influence." "External. Are you saying someone is influencing me?" "Indirectly. Through stressors, through provocations. Perhaps through people you've been in contact with without realizing it." My stomach clenched. "Who exactly?" He exhaled. "And maybe it's Pavel Stepanovich doing it." At that moment, the door was hit again, this time so hard that the floor shook. I barely kept my balance. Lena gasped. "He knows Andre is here. He mustn't see him in this state." Her voice trembled, as if she were talking not about her husband, but about something dangerous. It hurt me. "What state?" "I'm Fine." Danila stood between me and the door, as if afraid that I would rush in. "Andre, listen. Pavel Stepanovich is not a friend or an assistant. He's a man who has worked with cases like this before. He believes that people in your condition should not be treated, but controlled. Strictly. More strictly than I do. He came here because he believes you should be isolated." Isolated? I felt a wave rising inside me, either panic or anger. Am I crazy? You are a person in crisis. Those are two different things. But words didn't help. They bounced off me like glass. The door shook again. "Open up," came a low, commanding voice. "I know you're in there." Lena clung to Danila's elbow. "He came early. He wasn't supposed to come today. So he sensed something," Danila said grimly. "Or someone told him." They exchanged a quick, anxious glance. And then I realized I was the only one who didn't understand anything. And that was what infuriated me the most. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Silence covered the stairwell like a thick layer of snow. The three of us froze. Lena even stopped breathing. "Gone," she whispered. Danila leaned toward the lock, looking through the peephole. His face remained motionless, but his fingers trembled slightly. "No." He's standing in front of the door. "Waiting." "For what?" I asked. "For us to make a mistake." After those words, my chest felt cold. Lena approached Danila and whispered, "What should we do?" He slowly turned to me. "Andre, you need to tell us everything. Every strange moment, every memory lapse, every feeling that someone is interfering. If we understand what caused these episodes, we can protect you." I smiled wryly. It sounded like I'm a project, an experiment. Danila wanted to say something, but I interrupted him. "Fine, if I'm crazy, just say so. Am I nuts? Or am I being manipulated? Or has my wife conspired with you to kill me? Lena flinched. I never. Andrea, we wanted to save you. From what? From myself. My throat was tight. My eyes burned. Not from tears, but from helplessness. I sat down on the edge of a chair by the door and ran my hands over my face. Fine, you want the truth? You got it. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. First, the normal days, work, home, calls from Lena's parents, occasional meetings with friends. Everything was ordinary, gray, predictable. But then the gaps surfaced. Strange fragments, torn pieces, as if someone had cut out parts of my life with scissors. Sometimes, I wake up at night and don't remember how I went to sleep. Sometimes I find marks on my hands, as if from ropes or from holding something heavy. Several times, I woke up on the sofa, even though I remember going to bed in the bedroom. I looked at Lena. She said I was delirious at night, screaming. But I don't remember that. Danila nodded and ran his fingers over his chin, the way doctors do when they're putting together a puzzle. Also, I try to remember more. There was a moment, 2 weeks ago. I was coming home, but for some reason, I couldn't remember the way. I was driving down a street I've been walking down for 10 years, and suddenly everything seemed unfamiliar, as if I didn't live there. And also, I fell silent, because I remembered the very thing I had deliberately erased from my memory. I didn't want to believe it. What? Danila asked. I exhaled. Once, I woke up in a car, and there was a bag in the back seat. I didn't remember where it came from. Inside were gloves, a flashlight, scissors, and some kind of list. Lena bit her lip. You promised me you wouldn't bring that up, she said barely audibly. I looked straight at her. Now tell me, why did you grab that bag from me and throw it away? And why did you say it was from work and then refuse to explain? Lena cringed as if I had hit her. Danila put his hand on her shoulder. We were afraid it was part of your split personality, that you were doing something at night and couldn't control yourself. What was I doing? I almost shouted. What do you think I could have done? Killed someone. The silence after these words became so thick that it seemed you could cut it with a knife. Lena closed her eyes. Danila said slowly, we're not saying anything for sure, but we had to be careful. I stood up. I wanted to go to the window, but my legs were shaking. All three of us were on edge. But the door behind which Pavel Stepanovich stood seemed more alive than we were. And suddenly it shook again. Whisper, barely audible, as if someone had spoken directly into the crack. Andrei! Lena cried out and grabbed my hand. You mustn't see him, she whispered. What? I asked. Danila took a deep breath. Because... He paused. Because Pavel Stepanovich thinks you're dangerous. To whom? Lena looked up at me and whispered. To both of us and to himself. At that moment, the phone suddenly rang. It was a cheap, blue push-button phone. It was in the pocket of my jacket, which was hanging on a chair. Everyone jumped. The ring was sharp, unpleasant, almost piercing, and at the same time, familiar. Too familiar. The phone vibrated so violently that it seemed as if it was about to break free and fall to the floor. He slowly walked over. An incoming call flashed on the screen. Contact name. Mommy. My breath caught in my throat. Don't answer it, Lena whispered. Please. I'll take it. Danila stepped toward me. Andrei, don't. It could be a trigger. We don't know who's on the other end or how they'll react. I pressed the reply button. Danila cursed. The phone in my hand became cold as ice. I held it to my ear. Hello. And the voice I had only heard in my dreams, only in childhood memories that had long since faded and hurt. Andreyka. My mother's voice. A dead voice. I dropped the phone. Lena screamed. Danila turned pale. And in the hallway on the other side of the door, there was a quiet, almost affectionate laugh. The phone lay on the floor, the screen flashing, the sound seeming to break off, then stopping, then returning, as if someone on the other end of the line was speaking, leaning directly into the speaker. Lena covered her ears. Danila pressed himself against the wall, his face contorted. But none of them dared to pick up the phone. Except me. I leaned over, even though everything inside me resisted. The voice, that voice, shouldn't have existed. It was part of my memory, and memory is a treacherous thing. But this voice sounded too vivid. Too real. I picked up the phone. The screen went blank. The call ended, and the silence became so thick that it felt as if everything in the room had stopped breathing. Even the footsteps outside the door fell silent. Andre, Lena whispered. Please, tell me you're not serious. I slowly sat down on the sofa. My head hurt, as if metal were being drilled inside it. Everything was mixed up. Voices, fears, fragments of memories. And somewhere in the midst of it all, my mother's voice trembled quietly, the very one I had almost forgotten. I swallowed. It definitely happened. She said my name. Danila sat down opposite me, folding his arms in front of him. Andre, listen to me carefully. In a state of emotional breakdown, a person can perceive sound differently. The phone could have played an old recording, or the signal was interrupted. You could have interpreted. Don't. I looked up at him wearily. Do you think I heard a hallucination? He didn't answer directly, but his gaze said more than words. Do you have any proof that my mother could have called? I asked quietly. She's dead. You know that. Hallucinations are often based on memories, even deeply repressed ones. So you want to convince me that I'm losing my mind? Wonderful. Danila tried to speak, but I raised my hand. Now tell me, if I'm so unstable, why are you so afraid of Pavel Stepanovich? After all, if I'm just sick, he would help me. Or would he? Danila looked away. And that was enough. I slowly got up. To be honest, I said, I'm starting to get the feeling that you're both hiding something. Lena took a step toward me. Andre, dear, we did it for you. For me. I looked at her in such a way that she recoiled. Or for yourselves. Danila said quietly. Andre, listen. We're not your enemies. But Pavel Stepanovich, he's different. He won't talk to you. He thinks you're a threat. To whom? They both remained silent. To whom? I repeated. Lena clenched her fingers, and I noticed that her knuckles had turned white. Himself, she whispered finally. And maybe those around him. Me. Still here. To those around us. Who exactly? Lena couldn't take it anymore and started crying. It was the first time in this whole nightmare that she had cried openly. So she really was on the verge. But crying didn't provide any answers. And then there was a sound. Not a knock. Not a blow. And a quiet scratching at the door. As if with a fingernail. Long and thin. The scratching was slow, from top to bottom. S-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H. Lena screamed. Danila stood up, walked to the door, and pressed his eye to the peephole. His face turned so pale that I thought he was about to faint. What's going on? I asked. He took a step back, still staring at the door. He's looking right into the peephole. So what? I stepped forward. Danila raised his hand, as if to stop me from falling into the abyss. He swallowed. He has a razor in his hand. Lena covered her mouth with her hands. He wants to take Andre away, she said almost silently. He said if Andre gets out of control, he needs to be isolated. Isolate. Nice word. I slowly moved closer. What else did he say? Lena? You know, your phone rang for him more often than for anyone else. Lena closed her eyes. I wanted to stop it, but he said that if I resisted, he what? She looked up. He said that if I didn't cooperate, he'd find a way to prove that you were dangerous to me, and they could take you away, without a trial, without explanation. I felt the ground slip away beneath my feet. And you decided to go along with it? I asked coldly. I thought I could control it. That if I stayed close, I could protect you. That if the doctor was gentler, we could get you out of this state, and it would all be over. I slowly sat down on the sofa. So, I rubbed my face. So all this time you were watching me. Secretly. Recording. Discussing. Looking for signs. Danila sighed. Andre, you don't understand. We saw that you were in bad shape. Really bad shape. I smiled. So did you help? Did you get me out of it? Or did you make it worse? Neither of them answered. And at that moment, it really hit me. They were afraid of me. Not enemies. Not Pavel Stepanovich. Not the voice on the phone. Me. We froze in this unpleasant scene, as if in a theater of the absurd. And suddenly, a sharp knock. But not on the door. On the window. 3 knocks. Strong. Rhythmic. Danila turned pale. That's impossible. We're on the 3rd floor. I walked over to the window. slowly pulled back the curtain, and saw my reflection. For a second, I even thought it was just a mirror reflection. But the reflection blinked independently of me. Lena screamed and recoiled. I stepped back. There was no one outside the window. Only glass. Only night. But I saw a face. My own. Only older. Darker. More tired. The eyes. I had never seen those eyes in the mirror. They belonged to a person who had lived in darkness for too long. The face disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. I froze. The silence became suffocating. That, I finally said, wasn't a hallucination. Danila looked at me as if I had just pronounced a sentence. Andri. He took a step forward. You saw something that isn't there. No, I shook my head. I saw someone who is, but shouldn't be. Lena whispered. What does that mean? I ran my hand over my face, and the memory seemed to burst open, abruptly, painfully, as if someone had ripped off a bandage from a wound, revealing not partial forgetfulness, but a piece of my life that had been cut out. I know, I said quietly. Why have memory lapses? Why was there a bag in the car? Why did I feel like someone was controlling me? Danila froze. Lena took a step back, as if afraid to hear. I took a deep breath. 2 years ago, was registered. Lena turned pale. What? No, Andre, you would have told me. I wouldn't have. I smiled crookedly, because I didn't remember it myself. Danila looked at me as if he saw a new person in me. What exactly did you remember? I closed my eyes and said, I was part of a secret program, an experimental one. It was related to behavior and impulse control. And the curator there was Pavel Stepanovich. Lena fell into a chair, as if her legs had given way. That's impossible. You're a normal person, an ordinary person, I repeated, who had their reactions reprogrammed in the past to better control stress, aggression, suppression of emotions. I was the perfect candidate. High performance, low emotional involvement. But the program failed. They shut us down, disbanded us, and they erased some of my memories. I took a breath, but something came back. Danila ran his hand over his face. This is serious. It doesn't seem like nonsense. But then, why didn't you remember? Because they erased it. And because someone tried to bring it back. Lena whispered. Who? I looked at her. The one whose voice I heard on the phone. Not my mother. Just someone who knew I would break down when I heard that voice. And then, the memories that had been returned would burst forth. The three of us were silent. The room seemed to sway. There was another quiet creak behind the door. Pavel Stepanovich was still there. But now, I knew why. And I knew that he didn't need to help me, but to bring me back, into the system, under control. Andre, Danila said calmly, too calmly. What are you going to do? I looked at Lenin's trembling hands. At the door, at the window, and I realized there was no turning back. I'm going to go out to him, I said. Lena cried out. No, he'll take you away. You'll disappear. I shook my head. He doesn't need me. He needs who I used to be, but I'm not him anymore. And I walked to the door, by the arm, under fear, under the past that had finally returned. I stood in front of the door, feeling my palms grow cold. My breathing became heavy, as if the air in the room had turned to water. Lena held onto the edge of the table, as if she would collapse if she let go. Danila came closer, as if he was going to hold me back, but then stopped. He understood that it was already impossible to stop me. There was silence on the other side of the door. No knocking, no rustling, only anticipation, dense, alert, almost alive. He knew I was about to come out. He knew it in advance. I put my hand on the doorknob. Andri, Lena whispered almost inaudibly. Don't do it. He's not the one you needed back then. And now he's worse. He's not looking for the truth. He's looking for control. I turned to her and looked at her long and intently. She was speaking sincerely, but there was something else in her eyes, not fear for me, but fear of what would happen if he came inside. And then I understood. They were both afraid, not for me. They were afraid of me. Everything will be fine, I told them, not knowing if it was true or just self-reassurance. I opened the door. The hallway smelled of old plaster and cold. The light bulb above the stairwell was flickering. The silence was so thick that I could hear my own heartbeat. Pavel Stepanovich stood with his back to me. Tall, stocky, in a long black coat, as if it were not January slush but December cold. His hands behind his back, his head slightly tilted. He was listening, waiting. He could even hear my breathing. I remembered him in the background, from those old white rooms that smelled of antiseptic and dry dust. I remembered his voice, not malicious but icy, the kind that made everything inside me tighten. He turned around. His face was the same as in my fragmented memories, stern, composed, as if carved from cold stone. But his eyes, now there was a shadow in them that hadn't been there before. A shadow left by years of observing people he considered not patients, but material. Andre, he said calmly, as if we had met in the clinic corridor. You remember. The phrase was both a statement and a question. Enough, I replied. He nodded almost imperceptibly, like a teacher whose student had finally understood the formula. Good. Then we can continue. There's nothing to continue. That's not why I came here. Do you think you're free? He took a step closer. That your memories are yours? That your decisions are yours? You've forgotten, Andre. And that's good. It means we've done our job well. I shook my head. Not we. You. He smiled, barely, almost imperceptibly. I was just guiding you. And you were the perfect result. Until Lena got involved. Until that. He glanced at the door. That soft-hearted doctor decided he knew better. He took another step closer. You want the truth? Here it is. You were created, Andre. Created as a person without unnecessary reactions. As someone capable of withstanding any stress. You could have been a unique example. You were a model. I sighed. An example of what? He looked me straight in the eye. Obedience. We stood facing each other. He was confident, calm, as if he still had me in his grasp. I felt a power rising inside me that had previously been hidden under a layer of oblivion. They erased you, he continued, because you started to resist. That's normal. Experimental models sometimes break down. But we found a way to bring you back. Through your voice. Through triggers. Through details from the past that you couldn't ignore. So, I exhaled slowly. The phone wasn't from Lena. He tilted his head slightly. Do you really think she could have planned something? Your wife is a fragile, frightened woman who is only trying to preserve what is left of your old self. Lena's lips were trembling. She was standing in the doorway. She had heard everything. I turned around and saw so much pain in her eyes that my heart sank. She wasn't part of his game. She was a victim. But now, Andre, Pavel Stepanovich continued, your memories have returned. And with them, your potential. You can once again become the person I need. He held out his hand. Let's go. That's where you belong. I looked at his hand, at the door behind me, at Lena, and suddenly at myself. And I realized I was standing between two versions of myself. The one I was made to be, and who I tried to become. And only now did I have a choice. I stepped back, slowly but surely. Pavel Stepanovich said quietly, Andre, don't make me use the protocol. Protocol? I snorted. You're not in control anymore. He took a small device out of his pocket. A familiar one. An old-style electric pulse trigger. He had used on me once before. I didn't remember, but my body did. But the moment he raised it, Danila ran out of the apartment and pushed his hand away sharply. The device hit the wall and broke. You won't touch him again. Danila shouted, his voice breaking. Pavel Stepanovich looked at him with almost pity. Naive. Do you think you understand who you're working with? And then, too quickly for his age, he punched Danila in the solar plexus. Danila doubled over and fell to his knees. Danila. Lena rushed to him. Pavel looked up at me. And for the first time ever, I saw in him not cold confidence, but fear. He realized that I hadn't followed him, that I had made a choice. And when he realized that, he understood everything. So, he said quietly, you've decided to be yourself. Yes, I replied. The one you tried to destroy. He took a step back, but it was too late. I stepped forward, not threateningly, not aggressively, just firmly. You won't take me back there, and you won't break anyone around me. He was silent. We looked at each other. Two people who were once connected by the same program. One was the creator, the other was the result. But now we were equals. I closed the door. Slowly. He didn't move. When the lock clicked, Lena burst into tears. Danila stood up, breathing heavily. You made the right choice, he said. I sat down on the floor, leaning against the door. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than fear. But emptiness. An emptiness in which something real could be built. Lena came over and hugged me from behind. Quietly. Carefully. You're not alone, she whispered. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in my entire life, I understood a simple thing. They really did try to create me. They tried to guide me. They tried to destroy me. But none of them, no program, nor the curator, neither fear, nor the past, could take away what was most important to me. The right to be myself, no matter how complicated, broken, or contradictory I was. I took a deep breath, truly free for the first time. And in that freedom lay the future. Not an easy one, not an easy one, but it was mine.